Just on a technical, I think that it's proper communication. Anytime there's not a unanimous vote, the minority position ought to be represented by the last names of the people who voted in the minority. I was one of them. It's not about me, but there's also a vote about the dog thing, service dogs, and there were, I think, 5 affirmative, 7 negative, something like that. They ought to be listed out, so a reader in the future can know who was opposed or whatever. So, unanimous is one thing, everybody knows, all the whole board voted, everybody knows, you know how they voted then. So I would suggest for the future, that gets taken up. Then the other part was just simply, when it's a 12-0 vote, it's self-evident that it's unanimous. If it says unanimous yay, that might just, these are just technical things, but, you know, I read things, so thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor of approving the minutes from the May 6th board meeting? Thank you. It's unanimous. Next order of business is citizen comments. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak tonight? Moving on to board member comments. Is there anyone on the board that would like to speak?
I should say I appreciate the STEAMO event. I love people having the opportunity to talk to each other, not on that level, and realize that we're all just going to with the same end, laughing a little, always good. So anyway, just appreciate that.
Any other board member comments? Seeing none, moving on to the chairman's report. I attended the Telstar graduation on June 7th, and the ceremony was very well done. It was a fun tribute to the graduates and all that they had accomplished, and it honored all the support they had along the way, and the board should be very proud of the class of 2024. We have some outgoing board members. This is the last board meeting for Coral, and David and Tammy, who couldn't be here tonight. I want to thank you for your commitment to the district and the community, and for your service. And we're very fortunate to have you all on the board. And although I feel this is just the beginning of a long journey, I'd like to thank Mr. Penny for all that he has done this past year and commend his work as superintendent. You dove into a job that you had not held before with a mostly new administrative team and a brand new chair. Despite that, you excelled in the role. You determined the needs of the district and implemented creative ways to meet them, all the while developing a cohesive relationship with the board. Your willingness to find information and answer hard questions, and your patience and unrelenting support has been greatly appreciated. You've done an excellent job as superintendent, and the board and district are better because of it.
Thank you very much.
And lastly, we will enter into executive session twice this evening. The first session will be to discuss the AFSCME contract. When discussion is concluded, we will return to open session to vote on the contract. We'll then enter into the second executive session to conduct a review of the periodic goals of the superintendent. Once that discussion ends, we will return to open session only to adjourn. That is all I have. Upcoming committee board meetings. The next SAD44 board meeting will be Monday, August 19th at 6:30 here in the Telstar Library. And with education, finance, negotiations, and facility and personnel and policy, the next meetings are to be determined, where those committees will be reformed once we reconvene in the fall. And the Region 9 Cooperative Board will meet next on Wednesday, July 3rd at 6 p.m. at the Region 9 School of Applied Technology. And committee reports, which I imagine will be brief. In the Education Committee,
I will start the briefness. We have not met, so I have nothing to report.
Thank you. Facilities and Personnel, Marcy.
Same, nothing to report.
The Finance Committee, Meredith.
We did meet once, but it was mostly to prepare for the budget meeting.
And Policy Committee, David.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. And the Region 9 Cooperative Board, David Jones.
The budget passed easily. They're building the welding facility. They're wrestling with the problems of the culinary facility, which I am intrigued to discover is primarily the greenhouse, because their major concern is with farm to table. Seems like a trendy bar, but in fact, of course, it's one of the most basic factors in anything, culinary or anything in Maine. They're working at it hard and well within their budget constraints.
Thank you, David. Next is the Superintendent's Report and correspondence.
Thank you, everybody. So we have some appointments and transfers to get ready for the fall and a few additional hirings. So we have Schedule B appointments to start the fall off. Telstar Middle School Girls Soccer, Greg Lucci. Boys Soccer, Nate Crooker. Field Hockey, Morgan Richmond. Cross Country Running, Christy Hanscom. Student Leadership, Deb Doyle. And Yearbook, Susan Gordon. For the high school, we have Head Football Coach Tim O'Connor. Head Field Hockey Coach Gail White. Head Boys Soccer Coach Nick Conrad. Head Girls Soccer Coach Katie Crooker. Assistant Girls Soccer Coach Stacy Knight. Student Council, we have Terry Ingraham and Kelly Frazier. National Honor Society, Elka Bloss. FBLA, Melissa Poston. Yearbook Photographer, Terry Ingraham. Math League Coach, Jonathan Erdy. Senior Class Advisor, Cheyenne Millett Cordwell. Junior Class Advisor, Elka Bloss. Sophomore Class Advisor, Christy Hanscom. And Freshman Class Advisor, Terry Ingraham. We have 2 special ed tech appointments. Ariana Mancuso at Telstar Middle School and Mariah Vincent at Crescent Park. for EdTech 3s, and 1 EdTech 1, Caitlin Buck, hired at Crescent Park. Have to accept the resignation of Shelley Mogul, our curriculum director, officially. She is off for a new adventure in Oak Hill next year. And then we have some agenda items to come up later on. In your packets you are mailed, and there's some paper packets about the MSBA Delegate Assembly. And in the fall in August, you will elect a delegate and an alternate, as well as just information and preparation for the MSMA Fall Conference in October. That will be at the Augusta Civic Center again. Hopefully we can have more than one day of activities this year. Also, kudos to the high school administration for graduation for a great class. 28 kiddos doesn't seem like a lot for some people, but it was a great class to celebrate. They were very accomplished, and graduation had a lot of additional pieces added on this year, made it really personalized and really nice to see. It was really well attended, especially Friday night at graduation. Simple reminder that August 1st is the deadline for anyone who wishes to be considered for board chair. So per your policy BDA, I just need a letter of intent to me by August 1st, please. We talked about at one of the more recent board meetings about doing end of the year financial reports. So this is the standings of our cost centers as of today, essentially. An update from the one at home in your packets via email.
You got that?
So, as you can see, with 2 weeks remaining in the fiscal year, all of our cost centers are in good shape. We squeaked out with transportation and buildings and grounds. We're watching those closely. Transportation caught up with all the additional ride source support and fuel while we're waiting for our pumps to be in place and some maintenance. But we are going to be okay, making sure that all the cost centers stay in the black through the end of the year, which bodes well for our budgeting. And there'll be some more additional in cost centers 1 and 2 and 4 payroll deductions and other things coming out as we get close to the end before July 1. But pleased to say that we are in good shape with our current fiscal year 24 budget, and next week we'll roll into fiscal year 25. Or in 2 weeks, sorry, after July. I also want to make sure to say thank you to Mrs. Frazier, Ms. Goodwin, and Mr. Jones for your time served on the board and all your participation. It's very much appreciated. This is sometimes a thankless job, but we do appreciate people who are willing to step up and do it. And you will be missed. And then I am pleased to turn over the floor now to Dr. Murphy, who is here with us to go over his year in review for his grant writing and special projects he worked on.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. I want to congratulate everybody on getting your budget passed. It's good. Also, just double up on the kudos to Mr. Kenny for a job well done, and to the board members for getting off. Thank you for your service as well. So, this is my last board meeting in official capacity. It's been 40 years. That's a lot of board meetings. But I'm really happy to be here tonight and to share this information with you. As you know, at the end of last year, I was appointed to a part-time position, which was to coordinate special projects and look at some grant writing opportunities for the district. The special projects were primarily the Crescent Park School air conditioning project and pursuing the Early Learning Center in cooperation with Community Concepts. The Honeywell project ended up taking a lot longer than expected because of supply chain issues. My counterpart over here can verify that. We had hoped it would all be done by the beginning of the school year, and they couldn't get a few of the parts. And so I think it just recently got ratcheted up. I think it was in May. But it is functioning now, and I'm sure they'll be fine-tuning it, so it'll be ready to go in the fall. I'll get a little bit more into the Early Learning Center in just a little bit when I go through the results of the grant funding. I want to be clear, though, to the board that one of the reasons I think that we were successful in receiving grants as a district or towards those projects was because of collaboration. One of the things that we really focused on this year was trying to work with other organizations, because the strength in getting grants today is by collaborating with our other agencies. We also are in a position in SAD44 where, because of your lower disadvantaged student ratio, there are a lot of grants that you don't qualify for. So by looking at it from a more innovative approach and trying to hitch our horses to other carriages, if you will, that ends up being something that works out really well. So with that, I guess I will say one last thing. So 40 years, I just want to point out that Cheryl was on the board when I got hired. I'm leaving and Cheryl was still on the board, so she would have been disappointed. You did take a little hiatus in there, but thank you. So the pass out, I'll just go through this. I know you can read it. I'm not going to read it to you, but I just want to highlight a few areas here. So about 18 months ago, I came to you and I asked you for your support in trying to see if we could come up with a resolution because the Early Learning Center in Bethel was closing. And there was some discussion about that, and in the end, the board agreed to move with that, and I agreed not spend any local funds to do that, but to look at ways that we could maybe support getting those monies through grants or whatever. In April of that year, I spent the April vacation week looking at the paperwork, talking to DHS, trying to coordinate with DOE, and I realized that it was a big job. So I happened to talk to Community Concepts, and Community Concepts said, well, you know, we were thinking about that too. So we joined forces on that, and that turned out to be a very, very, I think, successful effort. I want to go on record and say that the big grants that you see about the Early Learning Center were not grants that I wrote. They were grants that were written by Community Concepts, but we collaborated on the concepts that went into that, and it was because, I think, of that strong collaboration and the connection between Community Concepts and the school district that the grants were ultimately awarded. We just actually recently, within the last month, we received a $250,000 grant from the state and a $1,200,000 grant from the feds. So that project is up and running. Ground will be broken soon. As I say in here, all the permits have been gathered, all the work has been done, and it's going to be up in West Bethel. And we're hopeful that, you know, things will be up and ready to go pretty quickly. They're using modular construction because it was just really difficult to line up anybody that could come in and actually do a stick built. But it sounds like it's going to be a really great opportunity. Our goal to support Community Concepts in that effort was to see if we could raise funds to help pay for the utilities over an extended period of time for the first few years. Prior to July 1st of last year, we had received $25,000 from Sunday River, and I'd written a $10,000 Community Foundation grant, Maine Community Foundation, which we'd received. The other money that came in since then required a lot of time and effort. We spent quite a bit of time over the summer working with the Bingham Betterment Foundation, doing a tour of the property, getting them the information they needed to have them feel comfortable with issuing the $30,000. We did get that. We also received another donation from Sunday River Resort for $37,589. That was as a result of the gondola auction that they had. They had a bunch of gondolas, I guess, and they auctioned them all off, and they took the money and they split it between a few different organizations, and we were fortunate to be one of them. I just want to go on record and say Sunday River has been a very big supporter of this district for a long time, and they really stepped up with this as well. They also took in students or children from the Early Learning Center that didn't really have any place to go. So they expanded their services and provided some support for that. So to date, we've raised a little under $103,000 to go towards paying the cost of utilities, and those are basic utilities. It'll be electric, and Deb has all that money. It's all in a special account. It'll get cut when the building is up and running and they request, you know, oil and gas or whatever it might be. And, you know, if additional funds become available, then we'll still chase it, and I'll still help them do that. The other piece of this, as I mentioned before, was just the collaboration between Community Concepts and SAD44. And those were the two big grants that are listed right there for $250,000 and $1.2 million. So because of that, because of the utility money and a lot of the work that went into it, as I mentioned, this project is now pretty much complete. as far as the fundraising goes, and the groundbreaking, we'll let you know when that happens, but it's going to be pretty soon. Also, during the course of the year, I received a $20,000 anonymous grant, and that had a lot to do with our connection with Bing and Betterment and some of the ways that we kind of coordinated with that. And that's going to go towards installing a security system in that early learning center once it's up and running. We also work very closely with Woods and Trails, Gabe Perkins and his crew, and again, in collaborative effort, submitted a grant there. It was a $48,000 grant that we received for the trail work up behind the field hockey and softball field, and that is going to be matched. It was a requirement to have it be matched, and Maine West stepped up and said that they would provide that match of $20,000. So all $68,000 is coming to us from other sources as a result of that grant, and SAD44 it will not have any expenditure in that. Also, working with Stephanie Herbeck and the food bank, we're talking about how to address the backpack program. Backpack program, as I'm sure you're aware, is a program that allows us to send food home with kids who need that. And Stephanie and I had talked about that, and I was able to just kind of like lay the breadcrumbs, I guess, maybe. And that was funded, and it's what, $800 a month? So that's great. So when you look at those items, then I have to stress, I did pick up a $200 Harbor Freight gift card. Yeah, it's okay, thank you. That was at the very end. I said to Mr. Kenny, I think I can get another $200 before this is all over. So that was good. So altogether, if you look at that summary, you'll see that we're talking about $1,648,789 up in that neck of the woods someplace. And again, just really stressing, those two big ones are not grants that I wrote, but grants that were received because of the collaboration between the two. I also spent a very extended amount of time last summer pursuing the first different project that we were looking at, and Aaron will remember this, but this was the tile replacement at Telstar, it's asbestos. Well, we had received some revolving renovation money back 2019 or so that could have been used to do that, but at the same time we had the bus garage project, and the board decided that they didn't want to pursue both at the same time, and then COVID hit, and you know, the rest is history. But we went back out, basically started that whole process all over again. I looked back earlier this week to try to find what the amount was that the replacement tile project would have cost back then. I couldn't find it, but pretty good with numbers. I think it was about $600,000. The number that came in this past summer was $924,575. So sat down with Mr. Kenny, we looked at it. Revolving renovation would require you to pay, you would get reimbursed, or given, I guess, from the state, the percentage of free and reduced hot lunch students that you have, which would have meant that you would have ended up picking up almost 60% of that amount locally, and it was pretty clear that that was not probably going to happen. So despite all the time and effort that went into that, it was shelved. I have it. If you ever need it, it'll probably be $1.2 million by then, but at least we have some of the background done on that. We also looked at the possibility of doing some type of a grant that might allow SAD44, RSU10, RSU56 to combine on an alternative high school project. That spent about 3 months on that, and at the end of the day, the facility that we were looking at was no longer available. It never got to you because it really didn't get to that point, but we spent a lot of time looking and discussing it between the 3 school districts. And then earlier this year too, we looked at the possibility of trying to raise some funds for a special education playground at Crescent Park. I met with the Lewiston Public Works Department a couple of times. They shared their plans with us. It was a huge, huge expense. And the money that had been available back then for grants was no longer available. So again, that was not able to be pursued. And finally, we did submit an application together with the University of Maine 4-H Learning Center for some outdoor education grant money. We thought we had a pretty strong application for it. It was not funded. It looks like a lot of the places that got the money are places that have not done things like the Freshman Academy in the past. And again, that paperwork is all there if something else should come up down the road. So with that, I guess I just want to like do a mic drop or something, but it's, I do appreciate all the support personally that I've received from this board and from the district and from the staff for the last 40 years, and I wish you well. I think you're under good leadership, and I think this is a position worth exploring down the road when the time comes, because there is money out there, but I've learned this year you have to really look hard to find it if you're not a district that's very poor, or a district that has a lot of like migrants. That's a big one right now, a lot of money available for that. But, any questions? Mark, is it?
Couple questions, Dave.
Sure.
The anonymous grant, we accepted that. Was the identity ever revealed?
No,
I guess the question, how does a public entity accept money from anonymous sources?
Which grant are we talking about?
November 23rd, it has to do with the collaborative for the community concepts.
Yeah, the money actually is coming to us, but it's gonna go to Community Concepts to spend. It was through the Bingham Betterment Fund, so we received it from Bingham
Right,
Betterment.
and we actually knew that, right?
No, you knew the previous one, and then this grant was the second one that came in, and it came in through the Bingham Betterment Fund. So it was the Bingham Betterment Fund that
They're the
basically
donor.
said that they're the donor. We're getting it through
It was
them.
not anonymous. So
Well,
it's no longer anonymous.
It was anonymous to the Bingham Betterment Foundation, so,
Good enough, thank you.
yeah.
That's all I had, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
And before I conclude, just want to say thank you to David, also to Mike and Shelley as they move on to their new adventures, and appreciate everything you've done while you've been here, and wish you all the best, and you'll be missed, big shoes to fill, so thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. We do not have any old business to attend to this evening. Moving on to new business. Are there any adjustments at all to the agenda? Seeing none. Moving on to number 3. To see what action the board would like to take regarding the approval of the computation and declaration of votes for the district budget referendum held on June 11th, 2024. And for anyone willing to make a motion, we do have a proposed motion.
Motion to approve the results as presented in the packet.
Are you willing to read that bottom section below?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a monkey then. Yeah. Now, you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
I move that the computation and declaration of votes stated and attached hereto be approved, that the computation and declaration of votes be entered upon the records of Main School Administrative District Number 44, the district, and that a certified copy of the computation and declaration of votes be sent to each of the municipal clerks within the district.
Thank you, Scott.
Now you get to sign.
Oh, joy.
Please sign the same place, I'll get
No,
one copy, so you're all set. It's a little easier.
Yeah.
Any discussion at all?
Yeah, just one thing. Congratulations to a committee that has worked its way through all this in such a way that we have achieved a wonderful majority. A lot of other districts haven't.
Thank you.
So, congratulations.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor of approving the motion as read? Thank you, it's unanimous. Moving on to number 4, to see what action the board would like to take regarding the approval of the assessment warrant and the assessment schedule and notice of installments prepared by the treasurer for each member municipality of the district for fiscal year 2024, 2025, and to be issued in form presented to the meeting, and that the treasurer be authorized and directed to deliver to each member municipality its assessment warrant and its assessment schedule and notice of installments. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the motion as read? Thank you, it's unanimous. And number 5, to see what action the board would like to take regarding the approval of the computation and declaration of votes for the district school board elections held on June 11th, 2024. Same scenario as 3, if someone's willing to make a motion, if they would mind doing the proposed motion.
I'll make a motion that the computation and declaration of votes stated and attached hereto be approved. That the computation and declaration of votes be entered upon the records of Maine School Administration District Number 44, the district, and that a certified copy of the computation and declaration of votes be sent to each of the municipal clerks within the district and the commissioner, I can't say that word,
Okay.
of the Maine Department of Education.
Thank you, Stephanie. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, David. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the motion as read? Thank you, it's unanimous. Number 6, to see what action the board would like to take regarding the approval or authorizing the superintendent of schools to hire new staff during the summer. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Wake up, wake up.
Every signing.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Marcy. Any discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor of approving the authorization of superintendent of schools to hire staff during the summer? Thank you. It's unanimous. Number 7, to see what action the board would like to take in approving the superintendent's recommendation of Jessica Milligan as district-wide school psychologist for the 2024-2025 school year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Scott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, David. Any discussion?
Her packets are coming around just now.
Yes.
Yeah, quick,
This one goes back.
Who knows the numbers?
where is Dr. Milligan's office?
Office,
Psychologist?
so they're.
You're not here, are they? No.
They're only here they'll be here 2 days a week, and so they'll be traveling in the buildings.
Is there a practice, like a location of practice, or not really?
No, she works in other districts, she works in other districts, so.
Thank you.
Yes. So it's a contracted position with an outside source to replace our outgoing current school psychologist.
So that's where I get this. What is, so who is the contract with? Who's employing her, I guess is where I'm going with that. And if we're contracting with an outside source, who is that vendor, that contractor? Do I understand it right or not?
You can defer Jeannie.
So typically, we contract with an individual for a school psychologist, but Jessica, will be her 3rd district, and all of the other districts that she's in order for her to participate in Maine state retirement, she has to be part of SAD44. And so we are issuing her a contract, so she'll be working for SAD44 and access Maine retirement. No other benefits whatsoever.
The contract, does she have individual employment contracts with all the districts?
She has the same exact contract with us that she does with the other districts. She's her own entity.
You know, thank you.
We feel pretty fortunate to find somebody. These are not easy positions to find, especially in our part of the state. And she comes very highly recommended, so this was a big kudos for Jean to find somebody before the school year is out. We'll make sure everything's in place for the fall to start with, and she'll be busy.
Yes.
I just have more curiosity. Could you describe what the psychologist does? I mean, I get it, but it also, what kind of a real-life application would she be brought in for?
So she is the person who does our special ed testing, required special ed testing.
So anytime we have a referral for a student who requires special education, or to determine if they require special education, the school psychologist conducts some of that testing, which is typically all of the cognitive skill testing, like memory and intellectual skills, and also behavior rating scales, looking for anxiety, ADHD, autism, things like that. And then also, every 3 years, our students with special needs are reevaluated, and the school psychologist also conducts that testing.
So it's an accurate statement that all students under consideration for a special needs designation go before the psychologist at some point during the induction or
Yeah, right at the
in
beginning,
processing.
right at the beginning in process, and then, if I deem them eligible to be evaluated, yes, or the team does. And then also every 3 years, we look at that again.
I understand, thank you very much.
Yeah, so, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I wanna say this year alone, our school psychologist worked 2 days a week and did over 70 evaluations.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor of approving Jessica Milligan as district-wide school psychologist for the 2024-25 school year? Thank you, it's unanimous. And when you're done with your packets, leave your thoughts there, please. Number 8, to see what action the board would like to take in approving the superintendent's recommendation of Brian Twitchell as the SAD44 curriculum director FY25 with a salary of $92,500 for FY25 and FY26 to be negotiated on completion of full certification. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And second, thank you, Destiny. Any discussion?
So we were able to post this position, and we had 3 applications. We interviewed 2 of the 3 applications because of eligibility and certification requirements needed. Brian comes to us from a long past history of math teaching in the high school level, in the Mount Abram High School area, and then for the last 9 years he's been in the Carebeck School District as their district-wide math coach. In their district, they do not have a curriculum director, so he wore the hat of district math coach, curriculum director, testing coordinator, state reporting, all those different roles, very much what he'll be doing here, is what Shelley was doing already. So he'll be filling those same roles here. He does have his conditional certification, and by the end of next year, hopes to have his full certification, is working towards that. He was not able to be here with us tonight, he's watching on TV. He is out west scoring AP calculus exams at the national level. He is very much, for many years, he's been organizing the state math meets and across in Augusta for all the high school groups to come together. He's originally grew up in the Natural Hills area, been away for a while, but very excited to get into this type of role. His recommendations were glowing. People are so excited for him to have this opportunity to actually have the title and do the job he's been doing for many years, but to make it very official and formal. He will be starting here after July 1st, and wanted to help find a rental, and very much looking forward to it, and he's ready to get into it. He also will help us with some of the technology gaps being left by Mike. He has been a technology person. He has his own tech business in the area that it's a family business, so he'll also be able to help us with some of our tech needs going forward, so it kind of fills both roles a little bit. And willing to learn, knowing he hasn't done the job completely, but has a lot of experience in a lot of the different facets and aspects of the job. He's very excited to roll his sleeves up and get right into it, and to work with the staff. And so he'll have a busy summer as we're all in transition, but he's really much looking forward to it, and we get a chance to meet him when we come together in August, our August meeting.
Why does the mathematician want the job? I don't mean that in a nasty way, and obviously he's well qualified, but why?
He likes numbers and spreadsheets. He's really good at all the reporting, and he's really good at crunching the numbers with state test data. But he wants to expand and get into the whole curriculum director aspect and not just focus just on the math one. and ready for that next step and to put his skills to all aspects of the curriculum.
Thank you.
Brian?
Sure, there's averages for jobs this fall in line with like the median state or high and low range for this type of job? This
It
size district?
is in the we're in the middle,
Okay, thank you.
and especially where he's condition certified, and then we'll readjust to be at the average, which we talked about in coming in, so.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor of approving Brian Crystal as the curriculum director for FY '25? Thank you, it's unanimous. Please turn the packets back for the finish reading.
This time
Number 9, to see what action the board would like to take in approving the superintendent's recommendation for administrator contracts and central office staff for 2024-2025. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Marcy. Second?
Second.
In favor? Discussion. Any information is coming around.
I think these were in your packets that came out on email, but if they weren't, this is what the finance committee budgeted for and based off of. This puts all of the contracts in the same cycle for expiration, and it follows the same thing that was already set previous to this with the 4% step increase. So this just breaks down central office and all the administrators as to what next year will bring, and this is what you budgeted for.
Is there any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all of those in favor of approving the superintendent's recommendation for administrative contracts and central office staff for 24-25? Thank you, it's unanimous. Pass that information back as well, please. Thank
I've
you.
got a question. We'll send it back, it's fine. It is public record, correct? It was such a public record, thank you.
We had a glitch.
Number 10, to see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the SAD44 school board meeting schedule for the 2024-2025 school year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Cheryl, and a second. Marcy, thank you. Any discussion?
Cinco de Mayo and St. Patrick's Day.
That'd be great.
We can have game nights.
They're on Mondays, correct?
Yes. Except for the public hearing.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the SAD44 school board meeting schedule for 24-25? Number 11, to see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the second and final reading of policy BHC, board communications, and the policy committee will have a recommendation.
I was not at that last meeting, so I'm going to refer it over to Destiny. All these.
We do not
Thank
get a
you.
second where the policy committee has a recommendation. Is there any discussion? Scott?
Question for clarification, Aaron. So on the part where it's the section called board and teachers, and then what's been deleted, or so if it's, that's new language, right? That's got the shading on it? I think it is.
If you turn it towards me, I can tell you. So I believe, yes. Yep.
So my question, I think it's probably would be better English to say board, so it says board communication staff, says the board may communicate regularly, through such methods as the board deems appropriate. It seems that the intent is the board members as individuals. You see what I'm saying? If you look at it, I think the general idea is we funnel, everything with the board is here at a public proceeding, but it seems like the purpose of the language is to allow, or at least recognize that there's individual conversations that do happen. But that then the board, the last part of the same sentence says the board through policy dictates how, like if I call up the high school principal or something like that. I mean, does that make sense? Because otherwise it's sort of, it's, you know, it's, I mean, we're board, we're as a whole, we're board, but as individual members, there's a little bit of a, I wouldn't say frown upon, but the idea is to funnel everything through the meetings, which I think is appropriate. So I guess my question would be, should it see the board members may communicate regularly? I don't know, just a thought.
I see it, as opposed to just stating the board.
Well, it's kind of, actually, it's sort of a silly, as it's printed, it doesn't quite, it's like silly. Because if the board's committee, that means that somebody comes here in front of the board and then, I don't know, it just doesn't make, it's not good English the way it's written. I think there's a missing word there, that's my thought. And it doesn't have to hold the process up, it's not a big deal, but I think it's better English, or I'm missing some bigger picture that I'm not seeing, so, thank you.
And you could suggest an amendment to that if you wanted to add in the numbers to that wording where it's the second reading.
I would move that we insert the word members, the board, so the board members may communicate, and that would legitimize an individual conversation between, I don't know if I run into a teacher somewhere or something like that. Otherwise, it's kind of a little, you read the laws about this stuff, it's really not, there's not a lot, the laws put everybody, you know, we don't just call.
Did you read the last sentence also? It says individual board members should refrain from initiating communications or conversations with staff members on their own. So I think it is talking about the board as a whole entity, not as an individual member. Which is why it's written the way it is.
I can live with that too. I mean, I think it's odd the way it's worded, and I'll withdraw my amendment. All right, thank you. My motion. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the second and final reading of policy DHC? Thank you. It's unanimous. Number 12, to see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the second and final reading of policy DKC, expense authorization dash reimbursement, and the policy committee will have a recommendation.
Recommend approval.
Thank you, Destiny. We do not need a second. Discussion. Seeing none, all of those in favor of approving the second and final reading of policy DKC? Thank you. It's unanimous. Number 13, to see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the second and final reading of policy JICA, student dress, and the policy committee will have a recommendation.
You recommend approval.
Yes. I'll distribute some copies. We do not need a second discussion. Yes.
Although I know this is kind of baked in to the general proceedings in our buildings to allow teachers to have discretion if something becomes an educational disruption, I don't think it would hurt to, I think we discussed this a little bit last time, to have something in there that allows them to ask a student to remove the hat. I mean, it applies across the board, but I'm specifically thinking about elementary school right now. If it becomes a disruption, that the teacher does have that discretion. I know that sounds like the opposite of what I struck last time, but it's actually completely different. So I move to amend the policy to include the line, teachers have the discretion to ask any individual student to remove their hat if it's causing educational disruption.
Do I have a second? for
Second.
that amendment? Thank you, David. Is there any discussion on the amended motion? David Jones?
Is there a faint risk that we are trivializing the role of the board? Forgive me, but if we make a general statement about the ability, about the capacity of individual teachers to make decisions of this kind, that's one thing, and it's clearly not trivial. If we specify which peculiarity of student behavior is to be considered, it strikes me as trivializing our role.
I just see it as a general discussion of if the kids.
In that case, I would prefer that we didn't cite this as a specific example, these hats.
Hats versus everything else in the dress code, you mean? I'm not
Versus
sure.
the general capacity of the teacher to decide that something is disrupting the class. That's my only, my only concern is that if we specify an example.
I think it covers it in the policy, take your hat off when you do pledge allegiance, and be respectful, take your hat off if there's coming into a room or something where there's adults. But I do think that what she said would be more appropriate.
And I do think that that discretion exists for a teacher to say hats or anything else that's disrupting the classroom, but it's just kind of.
And that's my only concern. I would leave out the word hats and simply say anything that's disrupting the classroom is at the discretion of the teacher, may be prevented, or it's just.
This is a dress code thing, so for
Yeah.
anything involving the dress code.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Because that's what this policy is
Okay,
about.
yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously it's not talking about some totally other sort of disruption.
Right. Did I say that? Oh, yes, I did say that.
No, I have not, I have no, your general proposition strikes me as very sensible. I'm only concerned that if we narrow it down
To just hats
to
versus
just
the
hats,
dress code.
or if that's our example,
Yeah, I understand.
frankly,
That's
we
fine.
embarrass ourselves, I think.
But the dress code is fairly specific relative to what kids can and can't wear. It's not specific relative to hats. I mean, it's really, so hats are a separate entity, I think. I mean, you're not gonna ask kids to leave the classroom and take off their clothes if something is inappropriate. Well, if something's inappropriate, they're out of class and they're gonna have to leave. But the hat is, I don't know, I see it as something different, so I don't know that we should make it general.
So the discussion we had last time was that the administrators would take that over. Was that an accurate statement? Like, so if a teacher doesn't want it, they would go to the administrator would deal with it? That was the discussion I think we had last time, right? Is that the process that going into this, that everybody's thinking? Before the amendment?
I think you look at, and administration speak up, it'd be very similar to earbuds, cell phones, when we have different things in the classroom. You ask the students to comply, if they don't, then call the office, and the office will handle it.
So we had like a 25-minute conversation about that, to not make it, this teacher likes hats, this teacher doesn't, this teacher is okay with it. During the last 15 minutes when you're about to leave, this teacher's not. So it's not a teacher-specific thing. And I go back both ways, like, because some teachers aren't gonna like it. But you have to call every time a kid walks in with a hat.
This, I think what I'm suggesting is situational,
Yeah.
not a ban across, like, the math teacher says it's okay to have hats, and the English teacher says it's not okay to have hats. I think that causes some unnecessary friction. This is just giving teachers the discretion if the hat becomes a disruption in the classroom for them to ask the child to remove.
As an option, if you go up to the top of the student dress, on the third paragraph, it says, students are expected to wear clothing that does not interfere with the educational process. What if instead we added something there to say along the lines of, you know, students are expected to wear clothing and head coverings and hats that do not interfere with the educational process. If this poses an issue, administration has the right to ask that it be adjusted, you know, hats be taken off, clothing be switched, to kind of keep it more out of just the hats line, but kind of included in, you know, because we have the option to change any part of the student dress. It doesn't have to just be in the hat line if it makes people on both sides feel more like a middle ground. As an option.
I voted against the whole idea last meeting. I've been trying to find a way to get there, but I can't. The one amendment from last meeting that I actually was unfortunate was, in my opinion, removing the teacher's authority from just having a blanket rule of no hats. Hats are beyond a form of self-expression. They're also a means of inhibiting communication, two-way communication. I visualize a teacher in a traditional setting. You can't sometimes see people's eyes. There's a way of hiding. You can be in your own little world at a desk. I understand kids have issues, and that's fine. We have staff. I mean, I think if we're going to have allow hats, I still think the teacher ought to be given absolute authority in the classroom to decide how they want. Because there's that two-way communication. Not all communication is verbal. In fact, a lot of it isn't. So I would urge the board to defeat the policy amendment entirely, but we'll see where that goes. I also want to draw attention to Mr. Parker's June 10th email, and I found this was almost concerning. He talked about he referenced something called the I Love You Guys Foundation, which I looked up today, looked at the website a little bit. It's interesting, they do good things. But I'm going to read the last part. Their only, as far as the foundation, their only concern was the teachers might not be able to see the faces of students in their classes or in the hallways, which could impact their ability to read whether a person was in danger from suicide or student harassment. And you know, these conditions are surrounding mental health. We all read the news. We see that mental health, and we know that these are issues that confront our society. So I just don't think we're not going the right way. I think we ought to take note of Mr. Parker's comments here that beyond students' ability to self-express or not, are we suppressing that? I think that there's a little more to the story here than meets the eye. I understand. I try to get to where destiny is. I've been thinking about it. My son's 34. He said, you're at the lunch, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to vote no on the overall thing, and I'd urge the majority of the board to join me in defeating the overall message. I did try to make amends to Ella Hawks last meeting. I wrote a letter, so that's where I am, and thank you for your time.
David?
Without any intent, because I think everybody who's made a statement is serious and is considering it. But I think collectively this demonstrates my point, that there is something trivializing of the board's role in this SAD44 to spend this kind of time, to spend this kind of debate about some particular aspect of student dress. If there is a general position on student dress, presumably it includes hats, torn jeans, whatever it may include, just as it may not include the slogans that they on those garments. But at this level, it seems to me, what is required is a general statement, not a series of specifics that can reduce us to the trivial.
I just felt all the discussion was because it's new. And, you know, the other dress codes have been kind of established and we've talked through all of those, this is kind of a big new thing.
No, I think the discussion is very valuable.
Yeah.
But I think it also demonstrates, not in the positions of the members of the board, but overall, the fact that there's a level of generality at which the board should take its decisions and make its comments. And there is a level of specificity that needs to be left to the people on site, which none of us are.
I would agree, probably with Destiny's amendment, if we were gonna add something about discretion, to add it towards the end, as opposed to Stephanie's. I understand the intent of Stephanie's, I just think that, once we write it down in words, the intent no longer matters, and it's the words that matter. So I worry that if we say, I don't remember your exact wording, but I worry that if we word it that way, it generalizes it too much for teachers potentially to just say, oh, I don't like hats, so I prefer them not to be in my classroom, and it says in the policy that I can ask you to remove it. So I think, I understand your intent, but I don't know if necessarily the intent would transfer over to the application. So I think maybe putting it where Destiny suggested might be better suited.
I would like to note, and I apologize because not all of us have the policy before us, but the section I believe that Stephanie's referring to is very specific on hats. And it has different stipulations where it wouldn't be allowed. Hats are allowed in school except during the Pledge of Allegiance, National Anthem, or other solemn moments, or when a guest is making a speech or a presentation. That is when at last meeting it was suggested we strike the teachers retain the authority to ask that all hats be removed while students are in the classroom. So it's specific to that wording, so we could.
I suggested putting it in the third paragraph under student dress, where it says, the students are expected to wear clothing that does not interfere with educational process. And just adding that, so students are expected to wear clothing and hats that does not interfere with the educational process. Teachers retain the authority to ask administration for them to be removed. And that way it's still put on administration, and it's also, or not necessarily removed because we're adding clothing too. So clothing and hats, so I don't know how to word it. Teachers can ask administration based on, I don't remember how you worded it.
It just allows teachers the discretion to.
Okay, yeah, so just maybe allows them to discretion to, you know, ask administration to have clothing changed or hats removed due to distraction purposes or due to educational interference. Somebody help me out with wording here.
I gotta pull it up.
I think we already have the administration in there, so
Yeah.
asking administration is just redundant at that point, generalizing it. I think the point is the hat can be removed where a shirt can't be, and they would get sent to the office, right?
Right, but we,
I see your point on it, and I know why we took it out last time, so it wasn't a back and forth thing with the teachers. Are we only going over the amendment at this point, or is anything else open to discussion?
Yes.
It would have to be a blanket statement that teachers have discretion to remove unwanted educational distractions and may be sent to administration for further review. They can remove it, or they may be sent to administration for further review.
Yeah.
So 2 parts.
I like that.
Somebody write it down, I can't remember.
Policies.
the students are expected to wear clothing and hats that does not interfere with the educational process. Teachers retain the
Have the
authority.
discretion to remove or send students to administration for further review.
Is it possible to move that we refer this question back to policy committee, the appropriate committee,
No.
for their further consideration?
We want to start it off for the school year.
The discussion that was held at the policy committee, it became very evident that it felt like it should be more of a full board
Yes.
discussion. So it would almost be spinning in circles, I think, to kick it back to the.
And I think we're all kind of getting at the same thing.
Right.
We're just trying to give teachers the ring to say, hey,
Right, without
That's
making
positive
it so
distraction.
that they're cool or not cool. You know, we don't want them to have that
however
pressure
we wanna
either.
say it,
Scott?
So when it came out of committee, teachers still had sole discretion, and that's now been removed. And what's being reintroduced is an idea where the teacher will have authority based on a criterion, not just unilateral. It's still gotta meet a threshold of educational
disruption.
interference, disruption, whatever the term is, so. Yeah, okay, you know how I feel. David's here.
This is actually the first time the kids have come to the board for something like this. And I think it's, their position has some merit, and I think that if this does get approved tonight, we might want to look at maybe seeing how this runs for 6 months and then have it come back to the board with discussion on how everything went with the teachers, and then decide whether we should make it permanent or another 6 months and see where we are, something like
Well, the
that.
administration
Just-
could bring it back to the policy committee next year,
Yeah,
essentially.
I'll just throw that
If
out.
it wasn't working, they
Right.
could come back at us and say, please revise this policy again. Because that's how all the policies that we saw in the first place was. It was, a lot of them were based on what administration thought needed to be reviewed again.
Right. But I like the idea that the students input when they come to the teachers with questions, and it made it to the board. And I like that idea that they are somewhat empowered, and that these issues with other things could come up, and we might be looking at other things that might be coming to the board from students, and I think that's a very positive thing.
If I understand you correctly, then, in addition to the fact that, of course, it can be reconsidered, because that's, anything the board does can be reconsidered, are you proposing, I would be in favor, that we deliberately state that this should be reconsidered, and that the student opinion in the matter should be part of that reconsideration?
If you can do that, Darren, with this, if you can put it on a probationary period type of thing, I don't know if you can, but if you can, and then have the input from the teachers after 6 months and bring it to the board and see where we're at.
I don't believe you can put a probationary period in a policy like that. You can make a decision as board to revisit it, or the committee revisit it, and have the kids come back again, but we can't put that language into the specific policy itself.
Okay, I'll make a recommendation that we revisit it.
Mark, did you come up with any language?
Well, I'm trying.
As long as it's crystal clear.
We're trying to
I might have.
Well, I mean, it's not gonna be in this part of the policy anyway, we'd have to revisit the other part of the policy.
She can adjust her amendment too if she chose
But
to.
that's only in the HAP policy section of it. You're talking about putting it in the whole section of the,
But the only, Stephanie made an amendment and we had that one
That's what I'm
seconded. So
saying,
there was a
like the
suggested second
adjustments
amendment,
that-
that one isn't necessarily on the table yet.
correct.
So if it's long before you put it over.
Right.
So can we
Should I
have
retract
clarification of where we're at?
Or you can choose to amend it.
You should have made your amendment.
But the amendment isn't for this section,
Right.
so there would be a retraction or a vote on it.
Um,
You don't have to retract it.
No.
Pressure.
Stick to your guns.
I mean, I just want to give the teachers some freedom, I don't. I'm gonna stick to the hat. I think it's specific to hats, and I'm gonna stick to the amendment.
Do you mind restating the amendment?
Okay. I move to amend the policy to include the line, teachers have the discretion to ask any individual student to remove the hat if it's causing educational disruption. In the hat paragraph.
Because we're not gonna be here all summer, we won't be able to do the other part of it. I just wanna kind of point out, as we said, we can always take something out. So it's good to have going into the school year language if this votes through with something, and then change that and adjust the other one at the same time when we reconvene. Because going into it, we would have nothing that gives teachers.
But that's not, it's the same policy.
I
I guess
think
I'm
we can adjust
confused. We
Because-
can adjust any paragraph
the-
in the entire
The whole
policy.
policy, the
Yeah.
whole, okay.
No, there doesn't,
Okay, but
Right.
just for hats that we're going over.
Whichever way you go, you can vote on it.
Right.
Or you can go both, just really cover yourself.
right,
Okay.
I mean,
yeah, any part of
The
the
whole dress
specific
policy.
policy of dress code can be adjusted right now.
it's
on
just
a
as you
regular
said,
basis.
like you can't, teachers have the discretion to be like, hey, take your shirt off, that's okay, you know, or whatever, like, that's pretty specific. So that's why.
So the amendment you've made, Stephanie, isn't verbatim, but it's very similar to the line we struck from that section of the policy before.
No,
Do you
it's
Except
not.
want it
it's by-
specific to the hats in that paragraph, or is the general consensus that it should be more toward the top?
I don't know what the general consensus is, but, you mean just in placement?
Yes, exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Because
Um,
where you're looking to place the amended wording is essentially right where we struck, something very similar
Exactly.
before.
Similar but different.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's what I thought.
So what is the difference? The difference is,
The difference is what I moved to strike last time was that it was, teachers could choose, in my classroom, there are no hats. And in my classroom, you can do whatever you want. And I felt that would cause just unnecessary friction. And we should be consistent across the board when we make policy.
so what you're saying now
So
is
this
not
is-
that?
It's not that, it's a specific, it's,
Education.
yeah, educational disruption, so it's a specific,
So we have to have a reason.
Yeah.
There's a
I
criteria
think it's
now.
if Brian
Exactly.
shows up with his big hat, we
Okay,
can tell
I-
Brian
Somewhere
to
else.
remove
Okay.
that.
It's not saying no to hats, it's just saying,
Which I'm wearing,
if
same
you're
with the
messing
land.
with wearing a hat, causing an issue, teacher would actually.
if you're spinning it or smacking it, you know, your fellow third grader with it or whatever, you know, whatever the case is, whatever they deem.
You realize, just fellow members of the board, that we have now spent more time on this question than we have on authorizing literally millions of dollars of expenditure fundamental to the operation of this school district, which is in fact our duty. And we are now spending more time. My original characterization of it as trivial remains, indeed, seems to me.
They
Even
did
more.
spend more time on the original change of the dress code than we have on just hats, just so you know, that one took a really long time.
Oh, no, I'm sure committees, I mean,
I'd like to work off David's comment a little bit. You know, we're actually, it's not trivial in some ways. It affects every student, affects all the teachers. The voters sign off on a $15.5 million investment for another year of preparing the youth for the future. I hear you, David, but it is a big deal, actually. And I'm gonna I'll leave it at that. We're working on the amendment, right? We're working on the amendment itself on Stefan, so we'll stick to that, and I'll have more comments on the main motion. Thank you.
Well, the amendment has become the main motion. She amended the motion.
Have we voted on the amendment?
Yes. Well, not voted, but there's a second. Now we're in the discussion period.
Of the amendment,
So what
which is
amended
have a
motion-
criterion to give the teacher,
Yes.
it's not
Amended
unilateral,
motion.
right, okay.
Right.
I'll vote for the amendment, because it's a step towards what I believe is better policy. But
You voted for the amended
Now we're
motion.
voting on the amended policy with her change in it.
So how do we get out of it?
Oh, no.
how do we get on to the next bit of business?
We would vote no on the amendment, or if it's, Stephanie wants to stick with the amendment, which is yes.
If everyone feels really strongly about moving the paragraph, I just want to give teachers the discretion, I'm happy to retract it.
And we have Stephanie's amendment with the second.
It's fine.
I have more clarification questions. So it's qualified discretion. She said discretion, but it's qualified discretion. You gotta have a reason.
It's
Yes.
specific to
Yes.
behavior that's.
Right, you need to
happening,
link
that's-
misbehavior, okay, so then, all right, and now another question is this is K to 12? This is applicable, this is not, we're not making, reading these surveys, it was not as warmly received by the people in the schools as people doing the work as we were first told on May 6th. And so I guess I just point that out as well. I will vote against the motion then, thank you.
That was my question as well. Has the high school done a survey like CPS did? The CPS survey was kind of opposite, that the teachers were all on board to what we were told the last time. CPS was majority, they didn't want to change it from the survey.
The original survey went out to middle school, high school, actually started with high school, went to middle school, high school. And then after the last board meeting, the survey went out to elementary to get there as well.
So what we got back was all the school,
What you saw was the elementary results.
that was just elementary, we haven't seen anything from middle high school.
So when I asked Ella for those results, when she went in and changed the survey to send out the elementary ones, it deleted the middle school, high school specific data. So all I have is what they took to the policy committee, which I wasn't at, to know, so I don't have specific numbers from that original survey of middle school, high school staff.
The majority was in favor of changing it
That's-
from this survey. There wasn't.
So I'm hoping by giving the teachers some discretion, I'm not being specific to the elementary level, but that's kind of what I'm thinking in making the amendment. Is that there is some discretion to deal with individual situations should they arise and be disruptive.
And it seems like the A team is not interested in kind of opening the can of worms of having separate policy for high school and elementary school.
Do you want to keep talking?
It's important.
I
I know people don't want to keep talking, but it is important. I said it at the last meeting. And with CPS's results in being opposite of the middle school and high school,
Yeah.
it's a big deal. And the teachers, it is their school. The kids are there, yes, but it is their classrooms and everything. So having their voice is important.
So it's obvious to me that we ought to bring this back. I mean, policy committee for further review.
You have to vote one way or another, and then that might determine next steps. Could you have a policy that needs to be voted on and
We table it.
current motion on,
Table
Yeah,
it.
you can table it.
could be
Yeah.
a decision, but some sort of decision has to be.
You need to make a recommendation to table it?
You'd have to. make a
Why couldn't we
motion.
just vote and then go from there?
Right.
Right, I think let's vote.
And someone could potentially make the amendment that this is only pertains to middle school and high school.
I make
If
the
the
amendment to
ambiguity
pertains to
is-
middle school and high school, and elementary school continues with the current policy.
And is that the entirety of your amendment? Because,
I think the motion of the middle school and high school.
let me step back a moment because we need to vote on the policy as, or the, sorry, the motion as amended right now.
Yeah, okay.
So we're just voting on
Yeah, but
the Stephanie's
And
amendment,
then-
that's it.
Well, the amended motion,
Yeah.
and if that does not pass at that point in time, you could make another amendment. Right?
But if it does pass, then we're done.
Yeah. I hope so.
What would be the advantage of tabling? I mean, we've discussed and discussed and discussed, I mean, the issues are pretty clear. It depends on how.
I know.
David won't be here next year. He doesn't want to talk about it. No, well, he doesn't want to talk about it.
And I think it's important, it would be nice to start the school year with the policy.
I agree.
Right, yes, I do.
Than to, like, after a month, say,
You don't wanna
oh, by the
change
way,
the school
everything's
year.
changed, It just doesn't seem like that would be effective.
Go for first, I'll go.
I was just wondering, Tanya and Beth, is it your preference ultimately to not have hats in the school, or do you not care?
Our teachers are fine with hats, but they would like to be able to, I mean, I guess, I don't know how explicit we have to be in the policy, but at the elementary level, if something's if something's distracting a child or distracting a whole classroom of kids, then of course the teacher's going to deal with it.
That is true at the middle school and high school level as
So,
well.
so I guess I'm just a little bit confused about why we have to be so explicit about giving the teacher that kind of control. Because I think that they have that control anyways, they're in charge of the classroom of kids. Our teachers are fine with hats, and if they're distracting, then they ask the kids to take them off. And so that's where we're at.
I am going to speak for Crescent Park specifically, not Woodstock. I'm looking at the survey results right now. I personally don't care. We have hat days, they're special days. We never have issues. I never have to ask the kids to take them off. They're not distracting. But that being said, our survey results from our staff clearly show that they're not necessarily in favor. We had 4 people say yes, that they would like that shift. 19 said no, and then 10 people said that they don't personally care either way. So I have to speak and represent our staff, and that's the data that came from Crescent Park staff specifically. Sorry to throw that out there.
I know, I don't know if that's helpful or not.
I guess my only caveat to that data, and I appreciate the teachers' input in that, but I think most of their reasoning was respect and was not safety or distraction or anything like that. And I think in my mind, I'm separating respect out, kind of like the discussion that Destiny and Scott were having, because that's a cultural norm that can be that's subjective, and I don't think the other 2 items are subjective. So I understand the teachers, I don't necessarily want to go against what they're saying, but I find the respect aspect of it to be subjective, so.
I made the point about the respect last time, and I still hold to it, that the younger kids should learn that. If it's not about respect, then we shouldn't have to have them take it off in the policy for the Pledge of Allegiance. When a guest speaker comes in, if it's not about respect, being part of it, then why do we have that written in that way? The national anthem, they're supposed to take it off. So why is it in there?
To meet in the middle.
Yes, it's compromising.
Because you're right, some people wouldn't care if people took it off for those reasons either.
It's a lot of things. It's respect, it's two-way communication, it's the purpose of the classroom is to instruct and to, you know, I understand people we all have our own forms of expression, but again, it's a $15.5 million effort, and we're here to represent the public defined by the 4 towns. I do not agree with the idea that student council have equal standing here. They'll have a chance. You turn 18, you start voting and doing everything else you do as adults for the rest of your life. We are charged with exercising our judgment to represent what we think is the best. Our little piece of society is these 4 towns, and we all have our views. We're going to vote. So that's what I got. Thank you.
I think that it's important to note that no matter what policy we have voted on ever, that you are never going to have 100% across the board buy-in on that from everybody, because we all have our own opinions on things. I think that it's important to note that we have students who are obviously overall in favor of this. They brought this through the proper channels. Our admin very clearly overall are on board with this and really support it. I think if you look at the numbers overall and not individual by school, it does lean towards their teachers are in favor. And I think it's doing a bit of a disservice. You know, it's not a safety issue at this point. I feel like we're doing a little bit of a disservice to the people that we're here also representing, which is our teachers and our admin, and supporting them on something that overall seem to be in favor or don't care one way or the other. And I do remember hearing in the last meeting that in fact hats, telling the kids to take them off constantly can actually be a bigger distraction than the actual hats in the classroom. I think maybe it was Tanya had said it, you know, might be a little bit of a novelty at first. I don't know if that was you. might be a novelty at first, then, you know, they'll kind of settle in. So I feel like it's really important to listen to the people that we say we're here representing. I think that it's important to listen to what they're saying to us.
Is there any, or are there any board members that would like to speak or discuss the amendment that haven't spoken about? That being the case, I feel we should vote on the amendment, and then from there, if that passes, we'll look at the full motion.
Just the amendment.
Wait, we're voting for the amendment, and
Yes.
not the amended policy.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're just voting for the addition of,
Well, yes, so we'll vote on,
sorry,
your amendment, the addition.
Yep.
Depending on how that goes, then we would vote on the policy.
on the policy, okay.
Yet again, do you mind just restating yours?
Wait, let me read it. I move to amend the policy to include the line, teachers have the discretion to ask any individual student to remove the hat if it's causing educational disruption.
All of those in favor of the proposed amendment? So the amendment passes. Voting yes. And so now we revisit the policy with the amended motion in there. Okay, so all of those in favor of approving the amendment to the second and final reading, or approving the policy of the second and final reading of policy JICA, student dress, as amended.
As amended.
Sorry. And all those opposed? So the motion passes.
What was the count?
9 yes, 3 no, right?
Oh,
4, sorry.
So Cole, Harrop, Jones.
Okay.
Sorry.
Chair, may I point out that I've been keeping track. We have spent 4.5 times as long on this as on all the other matters that we settled earlier.
That's because this was complicated, and this still is complicated.
Complicated does not necessarily mean warranting more of the board's time.
Moving on, number 14, to see what action the board wishes to take regarding entering into an executive session to consider labor contract negotiations with ASME employees pursuant to 1 MRSA 405 SD. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
David, do I